Millionaire insults a poor florist in public, but what she does next leaves him speechless. He thought money could buy everything until he insulted a poor florist. What she did next shocked everyone. The sharp clang of a luxury car door closing echoed as Petter stepped onto the sidewalk, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. His morning routine was flawless, as always. Black coffee, quick glance at the stock market, and another deal closed before the clock struck 9 a.m. As he exited the cafe, he adjusted his tailored coat and prepared to hail his driver waiting at the curb. That's when it happened. Katie, balancing a tray of flowers in one arm and her phone in the other, rushed past the cafe entrance. Her head was down, her focus consumed by the desperate voice on the other end of the line. "I don't have the money right now, but I can pay. Just give me more time," she pleaded. The collision was unavoidable. Katie's shoulder bumped into Petter with enough force to jostle the steaming coffee cup from his hand. It tumbled to the ground, splattering the polished sidewalk and a few drops staining the pristine hem of Petter's coat. The tray of flowers tipped, but miraculously stayed intact. Petter froze for a split second, then turned with icy precision. "Are you blind?" His voice sliced through the air, sharp and loud enough to make heads turn. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Katie looked up, her face flushed from the mix of embarrassment and frustration. "I'm so sorry I didn't." "Sorry," Petter interrupted, his tone laced with disdain. He gestured toward the dark stain now creeping up his coat. "This is worth more than you'll make in a year, and you think sorry cuts it?" Katie opened her mouth to respond, but her words faltered under his glare. The crowd gathering didn't help. People whispered, their phones poised to capture the scene, their eyes bouncing between the suited man and the woman clutching her tray of cheap flowers. I can clean it," Katie stammered, stepping forward. "Don't," Petter snapped, raising a hand to stop her. "People like you always think an apology or a little effort fixes everything. Newsflash, it doesn't." Katie flinched but held her ground. Her grip tightened on the tray as she straightened her posture. "I didn't mean to bump into you. I'm just trying to work. Mistakes happen." "Oh, is that what you call this?" Petter gestured toward the flowers. "Work? No wonder you're out here, hustling nickels while the rest of us actually contribute something." The air around them grew heavier as silence settled in the crowd. Katie's gaze dropped momentarily before she looked him in the eyes again. "I may not have much, but at least I'm trying. That's more than I can say for people who think money makes them better than everyone else." Petter raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Good luck with that attitude. You'll need it." Without waiting for her response, he turned and strode toward his waiting car. His driver opened the door, and Petter stepped inside without a backward glance. Katie stood rooted to the spot, her cheeks burning as she watched the black sedan disappear down the street. She exhaled sharply, adjusted the tray in her arms, and walked away, the murmurs of the crowd fading behind her. Katie hurried down the sidewalk, the tray of flowers digging into her arms as she tightened her grip. Her heart raced, not from the weight of the flowers, but from the scene that had just unfolded. The man's words lingered, sharp as a knife. She ducked into a narrow alley and set the tray on an overturned crate, her shoulders slumping. Katie pulled out her phone and checked the screen for missed calls from her landlord. The pit in her stomach deepened. Rent was overdue again, and she had nothing to show for it but a few wilted daisies and some crumpled dollar bills. Taking a shaky breath, Katie dialed the number back. "Ms. Turner," her landlord answered, his tone curt. "I hope you're calling with good news." Katie pinched the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Hargrove, I need just a little more time. I've been selling flowers all day, and I can—" "More time?" He interrupted, his voice rising. "You've had months. I've been more than patient. But if I don't have the rent by Friday, you're out. No exceptions." Katie bit her lip. "I understand. I'll get it to you. See that you do," he said before the line went dead. Katie lowered the phone slowly, her eyes closing. She had Lily to think about. Her daughter's wide eyes and soft laugh were what kept her going, what pushed her out onto the cold streets every morning. But no amount of love could turn a handful of flowers into the $700 she needed by the end of the week. She picked up the tray again, her resolve hardening. People like Petter could afford to scoff at mistakes and flaunt their privilege. She didn't have that luxury. Katie didn't care about his coat or his coffee. All she cared about was keeping a roof over her child's head. The sound of school bells in the distance broke her thoughts. Katie glanced at her watch. Lily would be out of school soon. She adjusted her tray and made her way toward the small brick building a few blocks away. Outside the gates, clusters of children poured into the streets, their laughter echoing off the buildings. Katie spotted Lily instantly, her blonde pigtails bouncing as she skipped toward her. A smile broke through Katie's worry. "Mommy!" Lily called, running into her arms. Katie hugged her tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of crayons and chocolate milk. "Hey, my love, how was school?" "It was good. Miss Jacobs said I got the highest score on my spelling test." Lily's grin was infectious. "That's amazing." Katie beamed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "You're so smart." Lily glanced at the tray of flowers. "Did you sell a lot today?" Katie hesitated, then smiled softly. "Not as much as I wanted to, but tomorrow's a new day." Lily nodded, her faith in her mother unwavering. "You always do your best. I know you'll sell them all tomorrow." Katie's chest tightened, her daughter's words cutting through her doubts. She couldn't let Lily down. No matter how hard it got, she had to keep pushing forward. As they walked home together, Katie's mind raced with possibilities. Could she sell the last of her flowers tonight? Find a part-time job that fit around Lily's schedule? Every option seemed impossible, but she refused to let despair win. Their small apartment was cold when they arrived, the radiator barely keeping up with the November chill. Katie set the tray of unsold flowers by the window and busied herself making dinner. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, a favorite of Lily's that stretched her budget. Later, after Lily was tucked into bed, Katie sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper. She listed every possible way she could scrape together the rent. Sell more flowers, take on cleaning jobs, ask for a loan. But every option led to the same conclusion. Time was running out. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from a friend who volunteered at the community center. "Hey, Katie, we're short on hands for the food drive tomorrow. Can you help?" Katie stared at the screen, her exhaustion battling her sense of responsibility. She had so little to give, but how could she say no when others needed help too? With a sigh, she typed a quick reply, "I'll be there." The next morning, Katie left Lily with a neighbor and made her way to the community center. The air was biting, and her thin jacket offered little warmth, but she clutched the tray of unsold flowers tightly as she walked. It wasn't unusual for her to juggle helping others with her own struggles. Today, however, the weight of her own problems felt heavier than ever. Inside the bustling center, volunteers moved in coordinated chaos. Long tables lined the room, stacked with canned goods, fresh produce, and donated clothing. Katie spotted her friend Sandra waving her over. "You're a lifesaver," Sandra said, handing Katie a pair of gloves. "We got a long line today." Katie forced a smile. Happy to help, she slipped on the gloves and took her place at one of the tables, packing boxes of food for families who were waiting outside. As the morning wore on, the line never seemed to shrink. Each face that passed by mirrored her own worries. Parents with tired eyes, children clutching at their coats, seniors looking worn but grateful. "Next, please," Katie called, reaching for another box. A woman approached, her small frame shivering beneath a threadbare scarf. She had a young boy at her side, his wide eyes darting around the room as if taking in every detail. Katie handed the woman a box, her fingers brushing against the cold skin of the woman's hands. "Thank you so much," the woman said, her voice soft but earnest. Katie nodded, her chest tightening. "Take care." The interaction was brief, but it stayed with her as she continued to work. It reminded her why she did this, why she gave time she didn't have and energy she couldn't spare. These were her neighbors, people like her, fighting battles no one else saw. By midday, Katie's muscles ached, but she refused to stop. Sandra approached with 2 cups of lukewarm coffee and handed one to her. "Break time. You've earned it." Katie took the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around it for warmth. She followed Sandra to a quieter corner of the room where they could sit. "How's everything going with you?" Sandra asked, her tone gentle but concerned. Katie hesitated. "It's fine." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "Katie, come on. I know you. What's going on?" Katie sighed, the weight of the last few days pressing down on her. "I'm behind on rent again. Mr. Hardrove's giving me until Friday, but I don't know how I'm going to pull it together." Sandra frowned. "That man has no heart. I don't want to lose our place. Lily deserves better than this constant uncertainty." Sandra reached out and squeezed Katie's hand. "You'll figure it out. You always do." Katie wanted to believe her, but the doubts in her mind were louder. Still, she nodded and finished her coffee before returning to the table. As the day wound down, Katie noticed a tall, well-dressed man enter the center. He didn't belong there. His tailored suit and polished shoes were out of place among the worn coats and work boots. At first, she thought he was a donor, but then he began moving through the room, scanning the volunteers. Her heart sank when his gaze landed on her. Petter. He approached slowly, his expression unreadable. Katie's pulse quickened. What was he doing here? She glanced at Sandra, who was oblivious to the man now standing just feet away. "I need to talk to you," Petter said, his tone low but firm. Katie straightened, meeting his eyes with a mix of defiance and confusion. "I'm busy." Petter glanced around. "Not for this. It's important." Katie hesitated, then reluctantly stepped away from the table. She led him toward the exit, her mind racing. When they were outside, she crossed her arms against the cold. "What do you want?" Petter looked at her for a moment. His usual air of superiority softened. "I was wrong yesterday. About you?" The words caught her off guard. She had expected condescension, not an apology. "Okay," Katie said cautiously, unsure where this was going. "I saw what you're doing here," Petter continued, gesturing toward the center. "You're helping people, even when you clearly have your own struggles. That's admirable." Katie blinked, unsure how to respond. She wanted to say something biting, to remind him of his cruel words from the day before. But instead, she simply asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Petter shifted uncomfortably. "Because I feel like I owe you something." "Let me help." Katie's chest tightened. "Help? You think you can just throw money at this and fix everything?" Petter opened his mouth to respond, but hesitated. For once, he seemed unsure of himself. "No, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that yesterday I acted like an ass. And seeing you here, it made me realize I've been wrong about a lot of things." Katie studied him, searching for insincerity, but found none. She exhaled slowly. "I don't need your charity. What I need is respect." Petter nodded, his jaw tightening. "Fair enough." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Katie standing in the cold. Her emotions swirled. Anger, confusion, and unexpectedly, a flicker of hope. Petter walked briskly away from the community center, his thoughts churning. The encounter with Katie had unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. Her words echoed in his mind. "What I need is respect." It wasn't something people usually demanded of him. He had always assumed that respect was inherent, tied to his wealth and status. But Katie's defiance suggested otherwise. As he stepped into his sleek black sedan, his driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Where to, sir?" Petter hesitated before replying. "Office." The ride back was silent. The city blurred past, all lights and movement, but Petter barely noticed. He kept replaying the scene in his head. Katie at the table, packing boxes for people she barely knew, while he stood there, useless. For the first time in years, he felt small. When they arrived at the office, the building's gleaming facade reflected the overcast sky. Petter walked through the lobby, nodding absently at the receptionist before stepping into the private elevator. The doors closed, and he leaned against the mirrored wall, staring at his reflection. He was everything he had worked to become. Sharp suit, perfect haircut, a commanding presence. Yet, standing there, he felt more like a stranger to himself. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to his expansive corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a testament to his success. The desk, sleek and minimalist, held only a laptop and a stack of neatly arranged files. It was a space designed to project power, but now it felt hollow. Petter sat down and flipped open his laptop, more out of habit than purpose. The day's financial reports glowed on the screen. Numbers. High, reassuring, and completely detached from the reality he had just witnessed. He scrolled through emails, but his focus wavered. "Cancel my afternoon meetings," he said abruptly into the intercom. "Yes, Mr. Carter," his assistant replied, without hesitation. Petter leaned back in his chair, his mind drifting to Katie again. He thought of her resolve, her fire, even in the face of humiliation. What kind of life had shaped someone like that? He had assumed she was just another struggling street vendor. But there was something about her, a quiet strength that made him feel inadequate. His phone buzzed on the desk, breaking his reverie. It was his sister, Amanda. He hesitated, then answered. "Petter, finally." Amanda's voice was bright, but impatient. "I've been trying to reach you all week." "Sorry," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "It's been busy." "You're always busy," she replied with a sigh. "Listen, are you coming to the gala tomorrow night? It's for the foundation, and I could use your support." Petter frowned. The foundation was Amanda's passion project, a nonprofit aimed at providing resources for low-income families. He had donated generously over the years, but his involvement rarely extended beyond writing checks. "I don't know," he said vaguely. "I've got a lot on my plate." Amanda wasn't buying it. "Come on, Petter. You're the face of success. It'd mean a lot to have you there." Petter hesitated. The last thing he wanted was another night of shallow conversations and networking. But before he could respond, Amanda added, "Besides, you might actually learn something. It's not all about the money, you know." Her words stung, not because she meant to criticize, but because they echoed Katie's sentiment. Petter sighed. "Fine, I'll be there." "Great. 7 sharp. Don't be late," Amanda said before hanging up. Petter set the phone down and stared out the window. He had spent his entire life building an empire, convinced that wealth and power were the ultimate measures of success. But now, for the first time, he felt the cracks in that belief. And the uncomfortable realization was dawning that maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong. The grand ballroom of the Hilton Hotel was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the room, where men in tailored suits and women in shimmering gowns sipped champagne and exchanged polite smiles. The soft hum of a string quartet filled the air, blending with the murmur of conversations. Petter stood near the bar, a glass of scotch in hand, scanning the crowd with disinterest. He had arrived precisely at 7, as Amanda instructed, but now he regretted coming. The room was filled with the usual faces: wealthy donors, business elites, and socialites flaunting their wealth under the guise of philanthropy. "Petter!" Amanda's voice called out, and he turned to see her weaving through the crowd. She wore a sleek black dress, her smile as polished as her appearance. "I'm glad you made it. I told you I would," Petter said, forcing a smile. Amanda studied him for a moment. "You seem distracted. Everything okay?" Petter shrugged. "Just a lot on my mind." Amanda raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. Instead, she looped her arm through his and began leading him toward a small stage at the front of the room. "Come on, I want you to meet someone." As they approached, Amanda gestured toward a woman standing near the stage, organizing papers. She was in her late 30s, dressed modestly, but with an air of quiet authority. "This is Rachel," Amanda said. "She's the director of one of our community programs." "Rachel, this is my brother, Petter." Rachel extended a hand, her smile warm but firm. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter. I've heard a lot about you." "All good, I hope," Petter replied, shaking her hand. "Mostly," Rachel said with a wink. Then her expression softened. "Amanda tells me you're one of our biggest supporters. I wanted to thank you personally. Your contributions have made a real difference." Petter nodded, but the compliment felt hollow. He knew his donations were substantial, but writing a check required little effort. He thought of Katie at the food drive, working tirelessly for people in need despite her own struggles. That kind of impact seemed far more meaningful. "What kind of work do you do?" Petter asked, genuinely curious. Rachel's eyes lit up. "Our program focuses on helping single mothers, providing childcare, job training, and housing support. It's about giving them the tools to build a better future for their families." Petter's mind flashed to Katie again. Her strength, her determination, her refusal to accept handouts. He hesitated before asking, "Do you work with vendors? People who sell on the streets?" Rachel nodded. "Absolutely. A lot of our participants start there. It's a tough life, but some of them are incredibly resourceful." "Why do you ask?" Petter hesitated. "No reason," he said quickly. "Just curious." Rachel smiled knowingly, as if she sensed there was more to his question. Before she could say anything further, Amanda stepped in. "Rachel, why don't you tell Petter about the project we're launching next month?" As Rachel began explaining the details of a new initiative, Petter found his attention drifting. He scanned the room, his thoughts consumed by Katie. The gala, with all its grandeur, suddenly felt superficial. These people celebrated their generosity with champagne and caviar, while Katie fought for survival on the streets. "Excuse me," Petter said abruptly, cutting Rachel off. "I need some air." Without waiting for a response, he turned and made his way to the exit. Outside, the crisp night air hit him like a splash of cold water. He loosened his tie and leaned against a marble pillar, staring at the city lights. For years, he had prided himself on being a man of action, someone who got results. But now he felt paralyzed, torn between the life he had built and the gnawing realization that it lacked real purpose. Katie's face flashed in his mind again, and a strange determination stirred within him. Petter pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in months. When the line connected, a familiar voice answered. "Victor," Petter said, his tone firm. "I need your help. It's about someone I met, and I think I've been looking at things all wrong." Victor's voice on the other end of the line was calm but curious. "You? Asking for help? That's new." Petter ignored the jab, pacing along the sidewalk outside the gala. "I need information about someone. Katie Turner. She sells flowers on 5th and Maple." There was a pause. "You're asking me to dig into a street vendor's life? What's this about?" "It's complicated," Petter admitted, running a hand through his hair. "She's not just some vendor. There's something about her. She's different." Victor sighed. "You're being cryptic, as usual. But fine, I'll see what I can find. Give me a day." "Thanks," Petter said, ending the call. He slid the phone back into his pocket, a mixture of relief and apprehension settling over him. For the first time in years, he was stepping outside his carefully controlled bubble. It felt uncomfortable, but also necessary. The next morning, Petter sat at his desk, unable to focus on work. Spreadsheets and reports blurred on his screen, his thoughts constantly drifting to Katie. He kept picturing her standing in the cold, balancing that tray of flowers, her eyes defiant despite her struggles. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his reverie. It was Victor. "I've got what you asked for," Victor said, "and it's eye-opening." Petter straightened in his chair. "Go on." "She's a single mom, lives in a tiny apartment on the east side," Victor began. "Works odd jobs, mostly selling flowers and cleaning offices at night. Has a daughter, Lily, 7 years old. Bright kid, top of her class, but they're barely scraping by. She's 3 months behind on rent, and her landlord's threatening eviction." Petter's stomach tightened. He had suspected Katie's situation was dire, but hearing it laid out like this made it all too real. "Anything else?" Petter asked. Victor hesitated. "She volunteers. Food drives, charity events, you name it. She spends what little free time she is helping other people, even when she can't help herself. She's not looking for a handout, Petter. She's just trying to survive." The line went quiet for a moment. "Thanks, Victor," Petter said finally, his voice softer than usual. "Just be careful," Victor warned. "This isn't your usual kind of project. People like her. She's not in it for money or power. Don't mess this up." Petter hung up without replying, the weight of Victor's words settling on him. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Katie's resilience, her refusal to give up despite everything working against her. It was the kind of strength he had never known. He picked up his phone again, this time dialing Amanda. "Petter." Amanda answered, her voice bright. "Did you disappear from the gala last night?" "I left early," he admitted. "Listen, I need a favor." "Of course," she said. "What's up?" "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. "Katie Turner. She's exactly the kind of person your foundation should be helping." Amanda was silent for a moment. "Okay, who is she?" She sells flowers near my office, Petter explained. She's struggling, but she's not looking for charity. She works harder than anyone I've met, and she's constantly giving back to her community. She deserves a chance. Amanda's voice softened. You sound different. This isn't like you. Petter sighed. Maybe it's time I was. There was another pause before Amanda said, bring her to the center. I'll set up a meeting. But Petter, don't push her. If she's proud, she might not accept help easily. I know, Petter said. Thanks, Amanda. That afternoon, Petter walked to 5th and Maple, his heart pounding in a way he didn't quite understand. When he saw Katie standing on the corner, her tray of flowers balanced against her hip, he hesitated. She looked so small against the backdrop of the bustling city, but there was a fire in her eyes that made her seem larger than life. Summoning his courage, Petter approached her. Katie spotted him immediately, her expression shifting from surprise to guarded annoyance. You again? What do you want this time? I'm not here to argue, Petter said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. I want to help. Katie frowned, her grip tightening on the tray. I told you, I don't need your charity. It's not charity, Petter insisted. It's a chance. My sister runs a foundation that helps people like you. People who are working hard but need a break. She wants to meet you. Katie studied him, her eyes narrowing. Why would you do this? After the way you treated me? Petter hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I was wrong, he said finally. About you. About a lot of things. I can't change what I said, but I can try to make up for it. Katie's expression softened, but only slightly. And if I say no, then I'll respect that, Petter said. But at least think about it. Please. Katie looked down at her tray, her thoughts clearly racing. Finally, she let out a long sigh. Fine, I'll think about it. Petter nodded, relief washing over him. That's all I'm asking. As he walked away, he couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. Not just for Katie, but for himself as well. Katie sat at her kitchen table that evening, her tray of flowers still untouched by the door. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the radiator struggling to warm the room. Across the table, Lily worked diligently on her homework, her pencil scratching against the paper. Katie stared at the folded card Petter had handed her earlier, a business card with Amanda Carter's name and contact information printed in elegant script. The words Carter Foundation for Families stood out, and Katie's thoughts swirled as she traced them with her finger. Mom? Lily's voice broke through her reverie. What's that? Katie quickly slid the card under a stack of mail. Nothing important, sweetheart. How's your homework? Lily tilted her head, studying her mother with a sharpness that reminded Katie just how perceptive her daughter could be. Are you okay? You've been quiet since dinner. Katie forced a smile. I'm fine. Just thinking about work. Did you sell a lot of flowers today? Lily asked, her tone hopeful. Katie hesitated, then shook her head. Not as many as I hoped. But tomorrow's a new day. Lily nodded, her faith unwavering. You always figure it out, Mom. Katie's chest tightened. She wished she shared her daughter's optimism. But the weight of their situation was becoming harder to ignore. Rent was due in 2 days, and she was no closer to paying it than she had been a week ago. Her gaze drifted back to the stack of mail, where the card was now buried. Petter's words from earlier replayed in her mind. It's not charity. It's a chance. She didn't trust him. How could she after the way he had treated her? But there had been something in his eyes today, a sincerity she hadn't expected. Lily, Katie said gently, setting her hands on the table. If someone offered us help, real help, what would you think? Lily frowned, her pencil pausing mid-sentence. Like a friend helping you with flowers? Not exactly, Katie said carefully. More like someone who wants to make things a little easier for us. Lily's frown deepened. Why would they do that? Katie hesitated. I don't know. Maybe because they think we deserve it. Lily's expression softened. You deserve it, Mom. You work so hard. If someone wants to help, maybe you should let them. Katie blinked, her daughter's words hitting her harder than she expected. She had always prided herself on her independence, her ability to face any challenge head-on. Accepting help felt like admitting defeat. But as she looked at Lily, her innocent faith shining through despite their struggles, Katie realized this wasn't just about her. It was about giving Lily a better life. The next morning, Katie called the number on the card. Her heart raced as the phone rang, and she almost hung up before Amanda's cheerful voice answered. "Hello, this is Amanda Carter." "Hi," Katie said, her voice shaky. "This is Katie Turner. Your brother. He told me to call you." There was a pause before Amanda replied warmly. "Katie, I'm so glad you called. Petter told me a little about you. I'd love to meet and talk more. Do you have time to stop by the foundation today?" Katie hesitated. The idea of stepping into Amanda's world, so different from her own, was daunting. But Lily's words echoed in her mind. "Maybe you should let them." "Okay," Katie said finally. "I'll come by." The Carter Foundation was housed in a modest but welcoming building downtown. Katie stood outside for a moment, clutching her coat tightly, before pushing open the glass doors. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and bustling, with volunteers moving between offices and clients chatting in the waiting area. "Katie," Amanda appeared from one of the hallways, her smile as bright as her voice. "I'm so glad you're here." Katie nodded, feeling out of place but determined not to show it. "Thanks for meeting with me." "Of course," Amanda said, leading her into a small office. The room was cozy, with colorful artwork on the walls and a desk stacked with papers. Amanda gestured for Katie to sit, then took a seat across from her. "I'll be honest," Amanda began, her tone kind but direct. "Petter doesn't usually get involved like this. For him to recommend someone means he really believes in you." Katie blinked, caught off guard. "I don't think believe is the right word. He barely knows me." "Maybe," Amanda said with a smile. "But he saw something, and so do I." Katie shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not looking for charity. I just want to work and take care of my daughter. And that's exactly why we want to help," Amanda said. "Our foundation doesn't hand out money. We provide opportunities. Housing assistance, job training, childcare support. Things that can help you get back on your feet without feeling like you've lost your independence." Katie hesitated, her mind racing with questions. Could this really be the solution she'd been searching for? Was it too good to be true? Amanda leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Katie, I know it's hard to trust people, especially when you've been let down before. But this isn't about pity. It's about giving you the tools to build the life you deserve. For you and Lily." Katie swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. After a long pause, she nodded. "Okay, I'll give it a try." Amanda's smile widened. "That's all I ask." As Katie left the foundation that day, she felt a glimmer of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Katie walked home from the foundation, her thoughts swirling. The conversation with Amanda had left her feeling a strange mix of relief and apprehension. For the first time in years, it felt like there was a path forward, but stepping onto it meant letting down her guard, something she hadn't done in a long time. When she reached her apartment, Lily was sitting at the table, coloring a picture of a house surrounded by flowers. Katie set down her bag and leaned over to kiss her daughter on the top of her head. "What's this?" Katie asked, pointing at the drawing. "Our new house," Lily said confidently. "It's going to have a big yard, and you can sell flowers there so you don't have to stand on the street anymore." Katie's chest tightened. "That's a beautiful idea, Lily. Did you find help?" Lily asked, her bright eyes looking up at her mother. Katie nodded slowly. "I think so, sweetheart. Someone wants to help us, and I'm going to try." Lily smiled, her confidence unshaken. "I knew you could do it, Mom." Over the next few days, Katie began attending meetings at the Carter Foundation. Each visit chipped away at her initial reluctance. The staff was kind and professional, treating her with respect rather than pity. They helped her fill out applications for housing assistance and scheduled her for a job skills workshop. The process was overwhelming at times, but Katie pushed through, her determination fueled by thoughts of Lily. During one of the meetings, Amanda sat with Katie, reviewing her paperwork. "You mentioned you clean offices at night," Amanda said, her tone thoughtful. "Have you ever considered something more stable? Maybe working with flowers full-time, like running a small business?" Katie blinked, surprised by the suggestion. "I've thought about it, but I don't know how to start something like that." Amanda smiled. "That's where we can help. We offer business training and small grants for people who want to start their own ventures. If flowers are your passion, Why not turn it into a career? Katie hesitated. The idea was appealing but intimidating. I wouldn't even know where to begin. That's what we're here for, Amanda said gently. Take some time to think about it. Later that evening, as Katie walked home, she noticed Petter standing near her usual flower-selling spot. He was out of place as always, his tailored coat and polished shoes drawing curious glances from passersby. "What are you doing here?" Katie asked, stopping a few feet away. "I wanted to see how things were going," Petter said. His tone was surprisingly neutral, free of the arrogance she had come to expect. Katie crossed her arms, wary. "And?" Petter gestured to the street corner. "I was thinking about what Amanda said about giving people opportunities. And it made me wonder, what would this corner look like if you didn't have to stand here every day?" Katie frowned, unsure where he was going with this. "What do you mean?" Petter hesitated before replying. "I've been working on a proposal with Amanda. The foundation could sponsor you, help you start a small flower shop, something permanent. You wouldn't have to hustle on the streets anymore." Katie stared at him, her emotions a tangled mix of disbelief and hope. "Why would you do that? What's in it for you?" Petter met her gaze, his expression sincere. "Because I was wrong about you. About everything. And I want to fix it." Katie's defenses rose instinctively. She had spent so long relying only on herself that accepting help, especially from someone like Petter, felt unnatural. But beneath her hesitation was a flicker of something else. Possibility. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice cautious. "No catch," Petter said. "Just a chance to prove that you're as strong as I know you are." Katie's breath caught. His words, simple but genuine, pierced through her doubts. She nodded slowly. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask," Petter said, his lips curving into a faint smile. As Katie walked away, her mind raced. For years, she had fought to survive in a world that often felt indifferent to her struggles. Now, for the first time, it seemed like the world might finally be fighting for her. Katie sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the glossy pamphlet Amanda had given her earlier that day. The Carter Foundation's logo was printed neatly in the corner, but what caught her attention was the title in bold letters: Small Business Grants, Turning Your Passion into Purpose. It sounded too good to be true, and the weight of doubt pressed heavily on her. Was she really capable of starting her own business? Did she have the skills, the confidence? The memory of Petter's words lingered in her mind. "You're as strong as I know you are, Mom?" Lily's voice broke her thoughts. The little girl peeked around the doorframe, her hair tied up in a messy ponytail. "Can I have water?" Katie nodded, motioning for her to come closer. As Lily climbed onto her lap, Katie hugged her tightly, the pamphlet still in her hand. "What's that?" Lily asked, pointing at it. Katie hesitated before answering. "It's about starting a flower shop. A real one, with walls and shelves and everything." Lily's eyes widened. "Like the kind in movies?" Katie smiled faintly, running a hand through her daughter's hair. "Yeah, like in movies? Are you going to do it?" Lily asked, her voice brimming with excitement. "I don't know yet," Katie admitted. "It's a big decision. But if I did, it could change a lot for us." Lily grinned. "I think you'd be the best flower shop owner ever." Katie's chest tightened. Her daughter's unwavering belief in her was both a comfort and a responsibility. "We'll see, sweetheart. We'll see." The next morning, Katie returned to the foundation, where Amanda greeted her with a warm smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," Amanda said, motioning for Katie to follow her into the office. Katie set her bag down and took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about the flower shop idea. It's a lot to take in." Amanda nodded, her expression understanding. "That's normal. Starting something new is always scary. But you've been running your own business already, selling flowers on the street, managing your inventory, handling customers. You're more prepared than you think." Katie considered this. She had always thought of her flower selling as survival, not a business. But Amanda was right. She had been doing the work all along. "I don't even know where to start," Katie admitted. "What if I fail?" Amanda leaned forward, her voice steady. "Everyone who's ever succeeded has felt that way at the beginning. The important thing is to take the first step, and you're not alone in this. We'll help you every step of the way." Katie nodded slowly. "Okay, what's the first step?" Over the next week, Katie threw herself into the foundation's business workshops. She learned about budgeting, inventory management, and even basic marketing. It was overwhelming at times, but every new skill she mastered made her feel a little more confident. Petter, true to his word, stayed involved without overstepping. He checked in occasionally, asking how the workshops were going and offering quiet encouragement. His presence, once a source of tension, had become almost comforting. One evening, after a particularly long day, Katie found Petter waiting outside the foundation. He held 2 cups of coffee and offered one to her as she approached. "You didn't have to do that," Katie said, accepting the cup but eyeing him warily. "I wanted to," Petter replied simply. "How's it going?" Katie shrugged. "It's a lot, but I'm starting to think I can actually do this." Petter smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "You can. You've already come this far. The rest is just details." Katie sipped her coffee, the warmth spreading through her. "Why are you doing this, Petter? Really?" Petter looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because I see something in you that I don't see in a lot of people. You're strong, and you don't give up. And maybe helping you is my way of figuring out what I've been missing in my own life." Katie studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity. But all she found was honesty, and it unsettled her more than she expected. "Well," Katie said finally, "thanks for believing in me." Petter nodded, and for a moment, the two of them stood in companionable silence, the noise of the city fading into the background. That night, as Katie tucked Lily into bed, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like there was a real chance to break free from the cycle of survival. She kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, "Good night, my love." As she turned off the light and climbed in her own bed, Katie allowed herself a small smile. She wasn't there yet, but she was closer than she had ever been. 6 months later, the corner of 5th and Maple looked completely transformed. Where Katie's tray of flowers once balanced precariously on a crate, now stood Bloom and Hope, a small but vibrant flower shop. The shop's glass windows were decorated with hand-painted flowers, and a cheerful wooden sign above the door displayed the name in bold letters. Inside, the scent of fresh blooms filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of a radio playing in the background. Katie stood behind the counter, carefully arranging a bouquet of sunflowers and daisies. Her hands moved with practiced ease, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She glanced around the shop, her heart swelling with pride. It wasn't perfect, there were still bills to pay, and the shop was modest compared to others in the city, but it was hers. "Mom!" Lily's voice rang out as she burst through the door, her backpack bouncing behind her. She ran up to the counter, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Miss Jacobs said my art project won first place. She said I can bring it home tomorrow and hang it here." Katie laughed, leaning down to hug her daughter. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I can't wait to see it." Lily beamed, then wandered off to inspect the flower displays, her favorite after-school routine. Katie watched her for a moment, marveling at how far they had come. The shop wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of everything they had worked for, a stable life, a future filled with possibility. The door chimed as it opened again, and Katie turned to see Petter step inside. He was dressed more casually than usual, his suit replaced with a simple sweater and jeans. He carried a cup of coffee in one hand and a small bouquet of lilies in the other. "For you," he said, holding out the flowers. Katie raised an eyebrow. "You do realize I own a flower shop now, right?" Petter grinned. "Consider it a symbolic gesture." Katie accepted the bouquet, setting it on the counter. "Thanks. They're beautiful." Petter glanced around the shop, nodding approvingly. "This place looks incredible. You've done an amazing job." Katie shrugged, but her smile betrayed her pride. "It's been a lot of work, but worth it." Petter leaned against the counter, his expression softening. "I meant what I said months ago, Katie. You're stronger than you realize. And seeing what you've built here, it's inspiring." Katie's cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "I couldn't have done it without the foundation. Without you." Petter shook his head. "All I did was open a door. You're the one who walked through it." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken gratitude and understanding. Katie finally broke the silence, her tone teasing. "So, are you here to buy flowers or just to give compliments?" "Both," Petter said with a smirk. "I need something for Amanda. She's been asking for weeks when I'd stop by to see the shop." Katie laughed, pulling together a bouquet of roses and lavender. "Tell her I said thank you for everything." Petter nodded, his expression turning serious. "She believes in you. We all do." Katie handed him the bouquet, their hands brushing briefly. "I'm learning to believe in myself, too." That evening, after closing the shop, Katie and Lily sat together in their small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and for the first time, it felt like home. Katie flipped through her planner, jotting down orders for the next day, while Lily doodled at the kitchen table. "Mom?" Lily asked suddenly, looking up from her drawing. "Are we happy now?" Katie paused, the question catching her off guard. She looked around the room, the cozy space filled with laughter and the smell of fresh flowers, and smiled. "Yeah, Lily," she said, pulling her daughter close. "We're happy." Lily grinned, resting her head on Katie's shoulder. "I'm glad." As Katie held her daughter, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. The struggles, the doubts, the moments when giving up felt like the only option. But through it all, they had persevered. They had found their bloom in the harshest soil, and now they were thriving. Katie closed her eyes, feeling the weight of gratitude settle over her. For Lily, for the foundation, for Petter, whose unexpected kindness had been the spark that lit the fire within her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Katie was ready. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was living. This story reminds us that strength isn't about how much we have, but how much we give, even when life tests us beyond our limits. Katie's journey shows that hope and determination can bloom even in the hardest of circumstances, and a single act of kindness can change everything. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many more lives it could inspire. Like, comment, and share this video to spread this powerful message of resilience and compassion. And if you're ready for more stories that stir your soul, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Together, let's keep the flame of hope alive.